Hold up. Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Real Estate Talk with Lisa. I'm your host, Lisa Jeffery, and today I have my wonderful co-host with me, Ms. Reba Burris Barnes, who's
Thank you.
also our team publicist. Girl, you look fabulous today.
Thank you. Trying to be like you.
Oh, girl, I tell you. Well, I hope that you guys got a chance to see last week's show and catch up, because what we talked about then was about real estate with respect to the Fair Housing Act. It's also known as the Civil Rights Act of 1968, and it was passed in 68 on April the 11th, 7 days after the death of Dr. Martin Luther King. But there's some history there, because as we learned in our last show, that particular piece of legislation had been in Congress for a period of time there.
Yes, indeed.
And with that being the case, it had not passed. But Dr. King's death was a catalyst that caused Congress to bring that to pass. And there were several organizations that also helped facilitate that. I call them the midwives, so to speak, of the birth of the act. And one was the NAACP,
Yes.
and then one was NAREB, NAREB, which stands for the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And so that was what we covered on last week. Now, I kind of plunged you right into a review, so I want to let you know who we are. Because you may be just tuning in for the first time. You may not know who we are. I am your host, Lisa Jeffery, but I'm also a realtor with Fairfax Realty, the senior team of Fairfax Realty. And we are coming to you every week just to give you information about real estate. Our theme is to open the door with keys of independence.
Yes.
And that's why we formed our team. That's why we put the show on. And what we look to do is to educate, empower, and motivate you to action. And so when we do that, we have lenders on. Talk to you about budgeting.
Yes,
Reba and I
indeed.
did a segment about your mindset, about having that millionaire mindset, and Reba's got that million dollar look today.
Thank you.
So so we talk about all aspects of real estate. We talk about buying, selling, investing, but we also talk about how you might, excuse me. Thank you so much. And we just real with you folks here, so you know me. But we also talk about housing issues such as senior housing. We talk to you about community development, things like that, because we want you to be in the know, right? We want them to be able to be empowered, correct?
Empowered also, they can learn how to forecast things happening in the community
That's right.
by having
That's
people
right.
like Marcus Daniels come on.
Yes,
And
yes.
his great work in the community, going to programs, joining associations that have the information for that perfect time to buy a home.
Correct.
But also to know about the zoning in the community, how
right.
that impacts the community as well. That's for everyone to know.
That's exactly
Yes,
right.
indeed.
So the more educated you are about what's going on, the more confident you feel. And when you're confident, then you're empowered to take the steps that you need to do. One of our sayings that we say is, and one of our guests, Brett Carter with Fidelity Direct Mortgage,
Yes,
had said that it's time plus motivation equals home ownership, because he believed that anybody could be a homeowner, given enough time and enough motivation. But we broke it down just a little further with his permission, and we used the word time as like an overall word, but in parentheses under that we had preparation
Yes.
and education, because you need both. You need to, during that time that you are waiting to get to home ownership on the other side of that equal sign, you need to be preparing.
Well, one thing, Lisa, because you have people like Brett Carter on and Reginald Derrickson,
Yes, yes.
you want to know how to go to your banker and
That's
kind of
right.
like plan your strategy.
That's exactly right.
And aside from Brett's great formula,
Yes.
a few weeks ago we had the time with Reginald Derrickson of Old Line Bank
That's right.
to explain actual formula. And we can
That's
always
right.
refer people back to that show.
That's right. That's right.
Because that formula can help you plan where you're going to buy your home and how to get that home.
Correct, correct.
Yes.
Because he talked to you about your debt to income ratio. So, knowing
Yes.
based on what your income is and your debt, as well as what that impact of that housing payment will have compared to your income, it really, those are the two factors that can control, the maximum monthly payment that you could have, which in turn feeds into the maximum uh, purchase price that you could have. So you need to have that information. So you have that preparation and
Right.
education piece, because when you're getting prepared and you're getting educated, that helps fuel your motivation as well. So those are key things. Now you may say, Reba referenced some of our previous shows. You may want to know, where can you find those? So what's one place they can find them, Reba?
You can go to our YouTube set for Real Estate Talk with Lisa Jeffery.
That's right.
We also have the program link up every week after the show is over on Facebook Live.
Right.
You can go back to Facebook
Mm-hmm.
at the WBGR Wellness Network
That's
and
right.
also find the show, Real Estate Talk with Lisa.
That's
The
right.
show is on after even today's show. After today's show, within an hour or less, it's back on again.
Right, you can
And
always
it's
see
always
it at
available.
your leisure, because sometimes you may feel like, hey, I was watching, it was really good, but I had to leave because
Yeah.
we air at a time that some of you may still be in the office, and so you may have caught part of it during your lunch break, but then you had to go. So this is a way for you to be able to come back and look at it. And of course, we have it on the show's Facebook page, Real Estate Talk with Lisa.
Yes.
And you can, we would love for you to like the page and follow it for a couple of reasons. Number one, we want to know who's out there,
Yeah.
who's watching, because we want to make sure that we're presenting information that's impactful for you. The other thing that we want to have you do when you do that is, whenever we have something that we're posting, like today we pre-posted the articles, one of the articles that we're going to talk about today, and we pre-posted that a digital copy so you can follow along with us. And if you're not able to now, you can go back to the page and you can click through that article and see exactly what we've been describing here on the show.
But aside from that, Lisa, they can also take time to share forward the information.
That's right.
Today's show, even last week's show. We
That's right.
began back, I think, in November.
In November, that's
so
correct.
We're going to 6 months now
6 months.
of quality
Wow, it's a long
programming.
time.
It's a long time.
You
And it's
know?
a good feeling.
It is. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, I've been stopped by people, thanking me for having the show on, enjoying the content
Yeah.
that we have, being able to participate. A lot of people didn't even know we were here. And so we just want to do our part to contribute to the conversation, to contribute to your growth in whatever area of real estate or real estate interest that you have.
Yes.
We've had shows on building ownership, HUD properties,
House repair.
house repair, yes.
Yeah.
Getting a rehab loan, condos,
Yeah.
being a knowledgeable renter, going into that process. So, so we do encourage you to go back to those.
But we also encourage that in our announcements, we have a link to Lisa's cell phone number.
Yes.
We have a link to Lisa's direct email address and mine as well, and our phone numbers. But my whole point is we want to encourage brokers to highlight their wonderful agents in the community. If they have an awards program, let us
right.
know about that as well. You have a
Exactly.
book you've written recently, like Melanie's book.
Melanie Gamble, yes.
Melanie
yes.
Gamble's book. And also the lady name is Carol Lee.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've gotten her book title.
I have to go back and look it
And we'll
up.
come
but
back
yes.
soon. But she had a program just recently,
Mm-hmm.
and she's also able to share her pearls of wisdom from her books.
Correct.
So we have a
correct.
bookshelf now with growing new books to share in the community. We have
Yes.
wonderful folks who've been our guests on the show.
That's right.
And then sometimes, in case the show is needed, we have the best of Lisa's show. And the best of Real Estate with Lisa Talks, you're going to see programming might be played again,
That's
but it's
right.
to your benefit. We want
right.
you to know the story goes on every Thursday at 2:30 p.m. right here at WBGR Wellness Network.
And then if you don't reach me directly, then let me know. If you do call, I do answer my phone. You can certainly reach Reba, and she helps book anyone that wants to be on the show. She brings to our attention for the team topics of interest that people have submitted. And you can reach her at 301-420
zero zero zero
zero
zero.
zero. So I want to start.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of topics that we're going to do, but in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of rearrange just a little bit. I'm a member of GCAR, which is the Greater Capital Area Association of Realtors, and by being a part of that association, that also makes me a member of the National Association of Realtors, which is a different organization than NAREB, who we had on last week. And the National Association of Realtors is the current name for the group that was the National Association of Realtor Boards, which was opposed which practiced some discriminatory tactics at that time. But they've come from that legacy. NAREB was born out of the inability to participate for African American and other minority realtors to participate with what was then the National Association of Real Estate Boards. And so they were formed, but now they're lockstep, kind of in a two-pronged manner in terms of addressing fair housing and other real estate industry issues. And so today we're going to talk about some of the work that they are currently doing, because I want to make we hear this a lot, fair and balanced. And it's usually from the people that are not fair or balanced. Okay, but
Be tactful.
Okay, I'm sorry, but we do want to present you with a fair and balanced approach to fair housing and let you know what everybody's doing, because it takes all of us. It's just like when we talked about African American history. African American history is American history. It's only segmented because it's been neglected in terms of the availability of it to the public, just in your general school setting. The issues that we're talking about today, they are real, they are documented.
Yes.
They are that some people may say we're in post-racial America. We had President Obama as president for 8 years, and everybody says he was divisive and things were divisive, and but we're past that now. Everybody's equal. And I had a post up earlier, and we're going to bring it back again, but it was talking about equality versus equity. And we're going to get into that before we close out the show. But I wanted to talk about the article that I received in my lovely edition of the Realtor magazine, put out by GCAR. And I've put a link to the entire digital publication on our Facebook page, so you can follow along with us. You can go back and read the story. But the story says, fair housing 50 years later, progress made, still work to be done. And so that's the overarching theme. When NAREB was here before last week, we're talking about still work to be done. The National Association of Realtors also saying the same thing. So the message is the same across the board. So whatever is passed, we're all on the same page now that we know that there's work to be done. So I wanted to talk to you about some of the things in the article. So the beginning of housing discrimination in America started with the early settlers.
All right.
And, colonial America. And even then, there were differences where they had African American or black indentured, because they weren't considered African American at that time. That wouldn't be the term that was used. That's more a term for us. But they had white and black indentured servants. And if you're not sure what that means that for a period of time, you agreed to work with someone, as a servant. And after that period of time was up, you would have your freedom.
But the word then was servant.
Yes, the word then was servant.
And it became divided when it became black and white.
That's right. Because it was not equal treatment even at that stage.
Exactly.
And then began the slave trade in America. Now we're going to have a caller here shortly, and when that caller calls, our caller is going to be, because I want to share that with you before she calls, is Tara Furges Houston, and she is one of the GCAR Fair Housing instructors. She is the 2018 president-elect for the Women Council of Realtors in the Northern Virginia metro area, and she is also an associate broker with EXP Realty, and she serves DC, Virginia, and Maryland. So she's going to come on and talk to us. So we'll start our discussion here with Reba and I, but when she calls, we'll break so we can talk to her a little bit about the article. So what I do like is that um, in this article, it's very clear what the discrepancies was, what the disparity was then and now. You know, it doesn't pull any punches. You know, and I like that it's fair and balanced.
It's fair and balanced, Lisa.
Yes. So you know, it was talking about you know, slavery at that time was not considered immoral in American society. You know, you have the conversations about Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings, who was his black slave by whom he had, you know, several children, and started that whole line. So, I mean, and you think he's one of our founding fathers. But at that time, you know, we were not considered, black people were not considered people in the same sense that white people were. Okay?
Or a whole person.
Exactly. And so prior to the Civil War, the courts refused to recognize any rights for people of African descent. And they were considered not to be citizens. Okay, so if you're not a citizen, all of those rights that you read in the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, they were said not to apply to you, and that made it difficult for you. And then when they had tried to
they
move
cite
forward,
several cases as well.
Oh yes, definitely. You've got let me see here. In 1866, now the Reconstruction Congress passed the Civil Rights of 1866, which guaranteed property rights to all citizens regardless of race. And it said that, you know, all citizens should have the same rights as white citizens to inherit, purchase, and sell real and personal property. And property such as real estate is considered real property. But prior to that, the courts would not allow, or the nation as it would not allow black ownership. And even when they were giving land away as the country was moving west, we were not entitled to that.
Well, they cited in the article that this point was demonstrated in the Dred Scott decision, Dred Scott versus Sanford, in which the court held that persons of African descent were not citizens of the United States and therefore not entitled to any rights.
That's right.
It sadly still happens.
Sadly still happens. That's right. And you say, well, no, you know, you can buy anywhere, you can go anywhere. Well, there was an article, just an example in the magazine, and you'll see that where you have a realtor that has two clients, and they're both teachers at the same school, and the first client is white, and the second client is black, and the first client is shown all the lovely homes in the neighborhood of the school and how great it'd be. You know, you have a short commute. The second client, the black client, was shown more mixed communities, farther away from the school, you know, and the realtor said in his defense, well, I wanted to find a place where he would feel the most comfortable. They would qualify for the same purchase amount.
Isn't that called camouflage discussion?
Yes, and so sometimes our perceptions in terms of how we handle the conversation with our clients as a realtor, with how we as fellow Americans perceive how our counterparts are being treated, we don't understand that it's an active thing. It's what people actually have going on in their heads, you know, when they're making a decision. And that realtor probably felt, well, you know, I just want him or her to feel comfortable. But how do you make that determination based on a neighborhood? So as a realtor, that's now considered unethical. But previously, there was an article number 34 that was part of a realtor code that said a realtor should never be instrumental in introducing in a neighborhood a character of property or occupancy, members of any race or nationality, or any individuals whose presence will clearly be detrimental to property values in that neighborhood. And at that time, those people that they felt would be detrimental to property values were people that looked like me and looked like Reba. And so that thought still goes on. There was actually something called blockbusting, where they would try to get a African American family into a neighborhood,
Mm-hmm.
and then scare all of the Caucasian population in the neighborhood and get them to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But they would, your property value is going to go down. But they would kind of create like a fire sale on the properties. It was a tactic so that they could then, that person that was instigating that could then get those properties at a lower value. And, when Melanie was on with her book, one of the things that she had found in her research was that the FHA actually played a role in discrimination. Now, today, one of the most affordable loans is an FHA loan.
Mm-hmm.
You only need 3.5% down to get it. But initially, some of the guidelines that FHA gave out were discriminatory. Like FHA instructed its staff and appraisers to consider the racial makeup of a neighborhood. And that's where we get the practice known as redlining from, where it was literally, there were certain areas that were coded red. And so the ability to get a loan, if you're from that neighborhood, it was diminished because of the practices that were not only instigated but met with full approval for the organization. Now, we had the separate but equal, Plessy versus Ferguson,
Mm-hmm.
and that created that institutionalized segregation in America, and so that affected housing. When you cannot buy where your money says that you can, that's a problem.
But the year date was 1896.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this mentality has still kept itself going. You mentioned the term redlining.
Yes.
I want to ask you, since you are a realtor at Fairfax Realty,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think that the current redlining, people call on the phone and say, "And what's your zip code?"
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I want to give them a whole other zip code just to see
To
what they
find
might
out
say.
if your response will be different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yes, studies show that in mortgage lending,
Mm-hmm.
minorities still face a challenge in terms of getting that loan approved, or getting the right loan approved. Not, you could have the same parity in terms of income and credit score, but you may still be offered that loan that's going to have that higher interest rate. You're not going to be offered sometimes the better product in terms of your mortgage. That's not to say all lenders, but it's still prevalent. It's testable when they sit down and look at the data. The one report you can look at is the state of housing in Black America that NAREB put out, and Executive Director Antoine Thompson, who was so gracious to call in to us on last Thursday. Was sharing with us, and we discussed that they have recorded documentation, and even people within the industry may not be aware of how they stack up statistically. When you look at the data. Now, what the Civil Rights Act of 1968 said, well, fair housing, what does it mean? Well, it was against discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, and national origin. Now, prior to that, there was legislation that was passed, but there was no major enforcement. And then it was at a point where, okay, if there were federal housing, which we could call commercial now, if it's like 5 units or more, then you weren't to practice discrimination there. But it didn't eliminate you buying a home. If you were a white person buying a home in a community, part of the contract that you might have might forbid you to when you moved out of the community to sell it to someone that was African American or other minorities. Like it was in your contract, but those things weren't regulated with that. Now there is an article, but you have one for me, Reba.
Which one now?
I was looking at
I want to mention another question first, though.
yes,
When it comes down to multiple units in a building,
yes.
if a person must they live in the building still, that's still in place as well. You must live when you buy a place at a certain time. When you buy a home, must you live in that home for a number of years first, or can you rent the house out immediately?
It all depends on how you structure your financing. So if you structure your financing as an owner occupant, then you do have like a stipulation where you have to actually live in the property. And that's based on what your agreement is with your lender in terms of obtaining that financing. But like you could have that same house and you already know that you're purchasing it as a rental property,
I hear you.
and so then you could just go ahead, get it under that financing and rent it out immediately.
So that was the one question I had in my mind just now about the owner occupancy, as opposed to a person buying a commercial building,
Right,
and then who can live in that building.
right. In terms of determining when you're looking at screening who you're going to allow to rent and that sort of
And
thing.
that could have been either, right? You cannot rent with that in mind as well, right?
That's right. You cannot discriminate when you're renting. That's correct. I think our guest is here. Let me see. Yes. All right. Let me pull her up. Miss Houston.
Yes, hi.
Hi. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you, Lisa?
I am doing very well. Very well. I am so glad to hear you. And we were just going through some of the prominent points in the article that you helped source. And I put it on the Facebook page for the viewers to be able to access it, follow along with us, go back and take a look later. I did introduce you earlier in terms of your role, in terms of instructor, in terms of broker, in terms of President-elect 2018 for the Women's Council of Realtors in the Northern Virginia area, metro area. So we're just delighted to have you on.
I'm excited to be on, and thank you so much for doing this, Lisa. I certainly appreciate it this month. Certainly we cannot give any more visibility than we're giving. We need to continue to bring more awareness
Yes, ma'am.
in fair housing, and so I certainly appreciate what it is you're doing here.
Thank you so much. Just for the audience, how long have you been in the real estate industry?
Oh, as a formal, practicing realtor, I've been in business for 14 years.
Wow.
I was
Excellent.
an investor prior to that,
Okay.
and owned some properties and used to do flips and those types of things. But as a practicing realtor, 14 years.
Excellent, excellent. And how long have you been an instructor in specificity to fair housing for GCAR?
I've been with GCAR regarding that role for a little over a year and a half now.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So what are you seeing in the classroom, in your current practice in real estate regarding fair housing challenges?
Well, I mean, it's still, 50 years, bravo, bravo. We've come quite a bit, a good ways, but we still have a ways to go. I'm still hearing, even in my classes, and I see it, even team members in my real estate team at EXP Realty are bringing scenarios to me that are what I consider to be fair housing violations. The scenarios that, people ask in the classes, they're often dibbling in fair housing. Things such as, we went with this other tenant because they didn't have kids in your particular application. someone is trying to rent a property. Um, Things such as when, you have a client go to an open house and, there's a very gung-ho about selling the home, and then all of a sudden, we've had people who've written offers on properties, and they're writing, full price offers, sometimes overpriced,
Right.
and all of a sudden they find that, oh, we decided we're just not going to sell at this moment.
Exactly.
Things such as that we're seeing.
Yes, yes.
May I ask a question?
Yes, and I have with me here my co-host, our publicist, our team publicist and team member, Miss Reba Burris Barnes. So she has a question for you.
Hi, Reva. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you doing today?
Wonderful.
Wonderful. I want to ask you, in your new position, and I wish the very best for this coming year, do you plan to have workshops or training sessions for potential buyers as well as your realtors about the idea of fair housing?
Absolutely. You mean for Women's Council Realtors? Is that the
Yes,
position
for
you're
your organization.
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. That is really our mission. Even, through Women's Council Realtors, similar, we have very similar backgrounds to some of the other organizations that are specific to a specific demographic. Most certainly, there will be workshops. It's all about, promoting the interest of women in real estate.
Yes.
This particular organization.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Now, I did share the initial classifications or protected classes for the Civil Rights Act of '68, but I know that there have been changes made, and then even if you're looking at D.C. versus, say, Montgomery County, there are some changes. Could you share a little bit about what the protected classes are?
Yes, and what I encourage you to do is if you have received your Maryland Realtor magazine
Yes,
this
ma'am.
month,
Yes.
they are all outlined for you. And I love
Excellent.
the way they do that particular issue each year. April is Fair Housing Month
Right.
every year. It's just this year we're celebrating the 50 years, so there's a much more of a focus on it.
Yes,
But
ma'am.
each year you will be updated in that Maryland Realtor magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And you will see all the classes. The interesting thing about Maryland as opposed to, in D.C., you have 18 protected classes and 17 that pertain to real estate.
Right.
In Maryland, you have, there are the 7 basic ones, and then Maryland adds 3 more. And then each jurisdiction has their own set of protected classes. So what I encourage you to do as a practicing realtor or real estate salesperson is to study that issue and look at the various jurisdictions. For example, you will find that in some jurisdictions, source of income is protected. In other jurisdictions, it's not.
Correct.
So when I say it's not, it means that if someone doesn't want to take people who are on the voucher program in that jurisdiction, they don't have to, and they can say that they don't want to. So it's going to be very important just to study the jurisdiction, study that particular chart that's in the magazine this month, and become familiar with it.
And that's correct. I actually received my Maryland Realtor magazine today. And, of course, your article is in our G-Card publication. And what you're highlighting is just there is an onus on us as real estate professionals to know the jurisdictions and the specific laws, because how can you tell if your client's rights have been violated if you're not sure what their rights are in a jurisdictional manner? So it's on us to make sure that we have done our due diligence so we can best serve our client.
You are so right. I think, the best thing we can do to protect our clients is to be very well educated and to have a conviction for this. Because home ownership really is, for most people, they hold their wealth, generational wealth is held in home ownership for most people. And so, when you have people who are denied the right to build generational wealth simply because of an area that they represent because they're in that protected class, they're not just robbing that particular person today. They are we are robbing, we meaning our industry, if we're not policed appropriately. Um, they're being robbed. Their generations to come are being robbed. It's not just about me right now. It's
Right.
about my children's children
That's
that will
correct.
suffer because I was denied the right to live where I could afford to live simply because of my race or my gender or what have you.
Correct, correct. And that is a piece that we've talked about on our show before about the need to build that generational wealth
Mm-hmm.
and how that starts with the cornerstone of home ownership. We've talked about even family statistics in terms of how children do even better in school when the family has a home
That's
as
true.
opposed to being a renter. It's documented. And there are people though that would say, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the show that we're in post-racial America, and these things they don't happen anymore. There's no more work that needs to be done. But I have found that if social media itself is any a barometer, there is still a racial discord that is in our country that filters into all of the industries that we have, and especially in housing, and we see it in our news. We hear the reports. Um, what would you say to the average consumer? What would your message be for someone that's hearing the show and they're saying, what can I be a part of, or what can I do? Is it self education? What can I do to make a difference?
Well, for one, Lisa, and you're exactly right. You do have some people that will assume that we're in the post-racial era, and I'm just going to be point blank. That's hogwash. You can just look at the news. I mean,
That's it.
look at what happened in Starbucks a
That's
couple
correct.
days ago. I mean,
That's
that's
right.
hogwash. In
Hours
fact, in
ago.
many ways, there are many people that
Yes.
they argue that we've gone backwards.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, we're more educated. Yeah, we, have the Fair Housing Act. Yeah, there's been a lot of legislation, put into place to protect. But at the end of the day, it is up to each of us as real estate professionals to police our own industry. And it's almost like when you go to the airport and they
Yes.
say you and say something.
Mm-hmm.
That is what we have to do. We are responsible for policing our own industry. We need to know where to go. There are various associations and organizations that will assist you. In D.C., you have the D.C. Office of Human Rights.
Yes.
You also have in Maryland the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights.
Mm-hmm.
You have HUD. If you need to go to that extent, and the only thing it requires is just a phone call.
Right.
You suspect it.
Mm-hmm.
You just have to suspect it,
Right.
and they will bring out the investigation. They spend millions of dollars to pay, testers and different people to investigate. So you just have to make a phone call. That's all you have to do. And if it's realtor to realtor, you can just use your board. You
That's
have,
right.
G car or H
Mm-hmm.
car, or if you're here in Virginia, NVAR.
Right.
Just start with your board.
Well, Tara, the women's organization that you're head of now, does your organization also impact the housing issue when it comes down to grocery stores? The term grocery store desert, when it comes down to housing, having someone to purchase a home and they cannot get to a grocery store, that kind of thing, or the term Section 8 housing for families that can't afford to buy the house, but how are they being trained on how to purchase a house and treat it like it is their home and not tear it apart?
I'm not sure if I understood your question. It sounds like you're cutting out a little bit.
Oh, excuse me. I was saying that I was wondering about when you help people with looking to buy a home. Do you deal with grocery store deserts in these communities where there are no stores to go to? Does that impact house sales? The idea of fair housing as far as having a place to take the children to buy groceries
So what you're talking about, I guess what she's saying is like amenities in the
in the
community.
community, right?
How does that, is that part of or residual effect of fair housing, whereas in some neighborhoods you have, your Harris Teeter, you have a nice grocery store. In other areas, you don't. Is that a side effect of fair housing?
I imagine it could be.
Mm-hmm.
If you study the history of fair housing, you will see that oftentimes um, there were areas that were affected because of the suburbanization of America.
Right.
So you had suburbs being developed, and that's how you had, redlining and blockbusting. It all stemmed from the suburbanization of America. So in the suburbs, you would have the nice town center. Well, now what we consider the nice town centers,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
the finer grocery stores and all that. All of that is definitely a residual effect of fair housing violations, blockbusting and redlining. Because what happens is grocery stores, they spend, grocery stores, coffee shops, Home Depot even, they spend money, millions of dollars in market research, and they want to plant their locations where they're going to have a certain clientele who can afford
Mm-hmm.
to buy their products and who's interested in their products. So it's just really just a residual effect when you go to a place where you see that, you have different shopping centers and things. Typically, if you look around, you can have housing that at least within a certain price range. You have,
Right.
taxes and things. Same thing with schools.
That's
School.
right.
That's one of the reasons why real estate professionals, we're told not to comment on the quality of the schools.
That's right.
The quality of the school oftentimes dictates or will indicate rather the quality of the community.
Hmm. That's correct.
And
That's correct.
even though we don't want to admit it, it is what it is.
Correct. And that's one of the things that unfortunately when I'm talking to clients, I can direct them to sites where they can get the school information, but that we don't talk about. We can't direct them with respect to the school systems. So when we're looking at fair housing,
Mm-hmm.
and what I think people think is a fair playing ground, people don't want to take in account how systemic uh, racial barriers have a long-term effect. Just like you said, when you deny someone housing, you're not just affecting them, but you're affecting the generations of their family.
Yes.
So when you have denied rights to a group of people, you have also affected those generations to come. So yes, okay, you have more freedoms now, but you have also more barriers that have come because of that initial denial. And I think there is just an unwillingness for people to take responsibility, not direct. Maybe you weren't in that generation, but to acknowledge. I guess acknowledge is the word. Acknowledge that is. And that seems to be a challenge for a lot of people.
Yes, I agree with you, Lisa. I do, and that's why I so appreciate you having this episode today regarding fair housing.
Well, Tara, I thank you so much for calling in and giving your take on it. And for my audience, you can read the full article in the link that I gave you that Tara is a contributor on. Her information is there at the end. And of course, she is an associate broker with eXp Realty. They serve DC, Virginia, and Maryland. So you can always reach out to her, and we'll have all of her contact information available to you on our page as well. It's just been a delight to have you, and we look forward to future conversations with you on this issue and other issues.
Okay, thank you so much for having me on. It was indeed an honor.
Have
All
a
right.
great
So
day.
much.
All right. Take
Okay.
care.
Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
So, I guess the story is the same
Mm-hmm.
as for last week, is that there's work to be done. That's the bottom line. And we had a graphic up earlier And I don't know if all of you saw it. It's on our page. It was put up by the NAREB site, and I like it because it has, there it is, so behind me.
Mm-hmm.
So you have here what's known as equality. And if it's on full screen, you should be able to see it, but it's on the site. But it says equality equals sameness. So you have the three boxes, and all the children want to see what's going on the field, right? But you have one child is really tall on the box. The other child is on tiptoes, just can just barely see it. And the poor child in the wheelchair cannot see it all. But that's equality. They all have a box. So they all have, quote unquote, an opportunity. Equality provides the same thing for everyone. This only works when people start from the same place, history, and set of circumstances. Now, this is equity. In equity, the tallest child really doesn't need the box. But the tall child is given his box to the shorter child. So now there's two boxes. They can really see well. And the child in the wheelchair has had a ramp built so they too can enjoy the game. So now everyone can enjoy. So equity equals justice. Equity is about fairness and providing people with the resources and opportunities that they need given their history and set of circumstances. And that's what we're talking about. That's what Ms. Houston said. That's what we've been sharing from the article. That's what our contingent from NAREB said on last week, is that you have to take into account the whole picture of how we have gotten where we are, why some of our neighborhoods are thriving and why some of our neighborhoods are not thriving. So it's important to understand all of those components when we talk about fair housing. If you go to the link on the Facebook page, you will see the article. But in the article, as she mentioned, there are contact points for if you feel like you've been discriminated against. There's places for you to check. The one that's not there is the one for Prince George's County, and I have a link for that, so I will be posting that so that you can get that information if you feel like you've been a victim of housing discrimination, because it is time for us to put our foot down,
yes,
so to speak, because we are one America. And with the economic and political things that are going on globally, it's time for us as a country to say, okay, we are going to step forward together. You cannot have part of your population not being served or having disservice, so to speak, and the other part of your population not being cognizant and not acknowledging that that's happening. When we talked about when NAREB started, it was an effort that was born out of we're not being given access, but we're out in this industry working. So we're going to create a supportive organization. But they were inclusive. I said they weren't exclusive. And so we need to have an inclusive society when we're talking about housing. If you're a seller, if you are a landlord, you need to be thinking about, am I operating to the ethics of fair housing when I am doing my rentals? Should you expect people to take care of your property? Certainly. Should you have, normal, regular expectations? Yes. But you should question yourself too to say, is there something about what I'm doing that is not ethical, that could be violating someone's fair housing rights? Okay? Now, before we sign off, I want to give a little highlight to this is Realtors Week. We mentioned it on last week's show.
Yes.
And so they're having all types of events. So I got things on my phone, I got things on my notes, but I wanted to make sure that I acknowledge that. And I also want to mention the term realtors because a lot of you may not know what that is. I asked a realtor friend yesterday if they were realtors were they familiar with what the term realtors meant, and they did not know. And just like the National Association of Realtors, their title is Realtor. For the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, NAREB, their members are called Realtists, REALTISTS. IST. And so, and I have friends that are both realtors and realtors. They participate in both organizations. But that is what the title is. Now, what realtors do during Realtors Week is they start off. They normally kick off on Sunday with a day of worship and prayer, and so that's happened already. But I just thought that was just an inspiring way to start your project off. You know, if you're putting God first, so that sets the tone for the efforts that you want to make. Because we know all about that, don't we, Reba?
Yes, we do. That's how we met.
That's prayer. How we met. That's exactly right. So, so that was, and that's nationwide. So everyone had that, and I saw different postings from across the country of the different church services. And then Monday they had recruitment. Tuesday was the political advocacy day. Wednesday was Fair Housing Act Day, and today is a day of a service in the community. So many of the organizations are having a service day today. And then tomorrow, the focus is going to be on plan for a successful community. And then Saturday, for most of your NAREB, or really all of your NAREB organizations, is going to be Community Wealth Building Day. So now, Renata Williams, who represented the Prince George's County Realtors Association, they are having their Community Wealth Building Day at our local Prince George's Sports and Learning Center.
Oh, what day is that going to be?
It's going to be this Saturday. It's going to be from 10 to 2. So you come out and support there. Now, if you're in the D.C. area, we have Brian Washington was here with Prime Lending. He's a good friend of the show.
Yes, he is.
Sponsor of last week's show. And they're having their event, because he represents D.C., the D.C. Realtors. So it's the Washington Real Estate Brokers Association. And they're having community wealth building through home ownership workshop. And that's going to be, that was this past Saturday was when they had their event.
All right.
So that was their community wealth
DC
building
chapter.
Day, for the DC chapter. So they weren't having theirs this week. They kicked theirs off early on last week. And then finally, H. Bernie Jackson, who is the historian for the organization, was in the studio on last Thursday. And their event for the Baltimore chapter, I received some information on that today from Ms. Gwendolyn Wynn, who's past president of the organization. And let's see, on the 21st, they're having their Community Wealth Building Day. And so they're going to have a housing counseling workshop in conjunction with Go Northwest Housing Agency. And the workshop is from 9 to 3. It's going to be held at the Center for Urban Families at 2201 North Monroe Street. And you have to pre-register. And there's a phone number, 410-947-0084. And then they're also having a chat and chew with residential title at 100 Painter Mill Road in Suite 200 from 3 to 5. And they're going to be talking about the Fair Housing Act. And so they're going to have refreshments, games, fellowship. And if you have clients in the Baltimore area that are trying to qualify for the programs, the earlier event, the workshop, will meet the qualifications, or will show you what else is needed to qualify for that. But we will also post this information. 2 of the flyers are already up. The Baltimore information will be on the page this afternoon. So if you have an opportunity, you want to learn more about the organization, about the events, do take that in account. Mm-hmm. So you have some closing thoughts for us, Reba?
I do.
All right.
I enjoyed being here today. It was a wonderful experience. I want to also ask you about announcing Marvie Campbell's play.
Oh, certainly. Go right ahead. She's a dear friend of the show's and ours.
A good friend of the show, and also a part of the program. When we have the program for Sala, for Black History Month,
yes,
at the luncheon, my volunteers were Marvie Campbell and Miss Lisa Jeffery. And so I'm very proud to say that today, aside from her acting and portraying Miss Rosa Parks, the play is called A Heavenly Reunion. The play written by Marvie Campbell.
Oh, okay. now.
So next Tuesday morning at 10:30 a.m.,
Okay.
we're invited to go to the First Baptist Church at the corner of Randolph Street and New Hampshire Avenue in Northwest Washington, D.C. Free admission, and I think you'll appreciate the time she's taken to prepare not only the play, but also the costuming.
Yes, because
Yeah.
she does her expertise is a vintage costume.
Yes, it is.
She does a great job with that.
So she's very excited about the whole process.
Yes, shout out to you, Marv. We're proud of you. So if you have an opportunity to come out and give her your support, I'm telling you, you will not be disappointed. And in line of events, I am actually going to be presenting some comedy. Yes, I do have a funny side. It's in here somewhere.
I found that funny side.
But it's going to be at Pennsylvania Avenue Baptist Church on May 5th as a part of Campaign for Jesus's Christian Singles event. I'll post a flyer on the show, but on the page about the show. But you come out, we're gonna have a good time, a lot of fun, food, fellowship, just a good, wholesome, getting up, kicking your feet up, having a good time.
So we've had the show today about the
Yes.
Fair Housing Act,
Yes, ma'am.
the importance of it.
Yes.
We've had a wonderful guest speaker today,
Yes.
and now we have to take time to say goodbye.
Yes.
But I want to thank you for letting me be on the show today. I enjoyed being here today.
Yes.
I'm going to talk a little bit slower. It was nice to be here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's always a pleasure to have you,
Thank
Reba.
you. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.
And we have some new things coming up. I brought a copy of a magazine. This is called, okay, we had a jumper. So this is Think Realty magazine. And I had the occasion to go to their event the past weekend. It was a 2-day event and met with real estate investors, D.C., Baltimore, Maryland, all over in our DMV area. It was an excellent event. Mr. Sherman Ragland, who has been our guest on our show, was there. Mr. Charles Blair, the mad scientist, and Brittany, I want to say Brittany's last name is Calloway. Is that right? And they were there representing their real estate investment group. Miss Tammy Phelps, Capital REI, Real Estate Investment Club was there. So many fine presenters, and they gave you the nuts and bolts of investing. If you're looking to flip, you're looking to wholesale, you're looking to do buy and hold strategies. So we are in the midst of preparing segments for you on that. But we thank you for joining us today. Remember to check us out, Facebook Live,
Yes.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Call us with show ideas. Call us if you want to sponsor an episode. You'd like to participate in an episode.
And call in.
Yes, exactly. So we're signing off, and we'll see you at the show. Oh. It's amazing though, Reba.